Welcome to Corner Café.
About the things.
And welcome to the Corner Cafe. And I have one of our personalities, Kirk M. Samuels, on the show today. But he's not going to be in the cafe. He is joining us at his cafe. Hey, Kirk.
Hey, I'm in my remote cafe.
Nice.
Actually, I saw you had a cup sitting there in front of you, so I poured some water in my coffee cup, so it looks like I'm sipping at something on a cafe too.
Well, you have to drink, something, even though it's not tea or coffee. I think that it works, Kirk. So, with Corner Cafe today, we're going to be talking about why it appears, is this true? My question to you, Kirk, is the masculine, I don't want to say energy, it sounds too new agey, but is the masculine missing from church?
I think that's a great question. I think it's a bold question to ask. I think it's the daring question to unpack. And the short answer to that question, I think, the nickel answer for the dollar question is maybe. Maybe. I think maybe in some ways it is, and then maybe in some ways it's not. But either way, I think it's something that we as a body of believers, as an ecclesia, should be concerned about, and we should be asking these questions.
Right. So, with your experience, you preach at churches. You're a faithful Christ follower. You go to church regularly. Do you see, because I have a lot of conversations with, my Christian friends that are women, and there's this thing that we feel like, well, there's so many women, but where are the men? However, I also have conversations, with people at work, and they're like, no, my church is thriving. We have a good balance of women and men. Do you find that too in your experience, that there's usually more women at church than there are men?
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's a matter of the church that you go to. I would say hands down if someone is experiencing a church body where there's not a presence of men, that's probably one sign of the health of that particular church. But I would say, right now, the church that I'm a part of, and to your point, yeah, I'm even on the teaching rotation at this particular church. It's called Step 7, and so it's primarily an addiction recovery ministry. And and the genesis of that church of Step 7 is it's kind of a men's focus. It kind of was birthed out of helping men recover from addiction. So that being said, for the most part, our church is probably about 80 or 90% men in attendance. That's probably changing a little bit because we're opening up a little bit to women as far as sober living homes and that sort of thing. So I say that to say the church that I'm currently a part of, it's quite the opposite. It's primarily men. But I would say over the course of my life, most churches that I've gone to or that I've attended and been a part of, I would say probably have been slightly heavier on the women's side of who's attending church. And but again, I think if you're looking for, you'll see what you're looking for. So if you walk into a church, and if you're thinking, there's no men, and you're only going to see women, and so a lot of times that's part of it as well. But I've been to and attended and visited some dynamic churches, especially here in the Denver area, that are really heavily focused on men and having that masculine presence as part of the church body and even the church experience and those sorts of things. So yeah, I mean, I've experienced both. I've experienced where it's like, man, there's a few guys and it's mostly women. And I've also experienced, like currently now, where it's pretty much mostly men and relatively speaking, a few women. But I think, maybe they say, everybody says that, stereotypes are normally right to some degree. And so I would say if you look at, the Big C church, just kind of less, especially the Western church culture anyway, I would say a lot of people would stereotype it as being a more feminine leaning experience, at least in the type of worship, the group of people that attend church, and just the overall culture. And so I bet you if you ask a lot of people who have been in or who have experienced churches, I bet you a lot of people would say that if nothing else, it's definitely a feminine centric experience.
Right. Yeah. And there's so many things to unpack here, but I want to do, when I introduced the show, saying for those of you who are radio listeners, you've been with Corner Cafe for a while, Kirk M. Samuels is a personality, but for those of you who are just tuning in, you're new to Corner Cafe, I want to do a proper introduction of Kirk M. Samuels. So Kirk was a personality, and now he has his own radio show, Mad Men of Masculinity, and it's on KLDC. And Kirk, when does the show air? And then also point people towards how else they can listen as well.
Yeah, so our website is madmenradio.com, and you're right, part of the Crawford family, KLDC 1220 AM, airs Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. and then Wednesday evenings at 6 p.m. And then my buddy and I, who we do the show together, we actually record our shows on Monday afternoons or Monday evenings. And when we do, we live stream the recording of our show on Facebook and YouTube. So if you go to Facebook or YouTube and look up, Mad Men Radio or Mad Men of Masculinity, you'll find us there, and as well as the podcast, all the podcast platforms. But specifically, at Crawford, we're on KLDC 1220 Saturday mornings and Wednesday evenings. And Rachel, you're the you're kind of the trunk of many trees in terms of radio shows, and so your presence is definitely felt in the area, and we wouldn't have the show that we have going on talking about healthy masculinity if it wasn't for you. And so I tell you this all the time in person, but it's good to affirm people in public. You're amazing. One of my great friends. We do Thanksgivings together, all that kind of stuff, and I love you as a sister that I've never had. You're a sister from another mister.
Yes. Yes, and likewise, Kirk. Just so thankful for the friendship, and the brother from another mister, if you can call it that. But I was just so thankful when you came on board to Corner Cafe and just learning about what you do and helping men and learning your whole story is quite amazing, and helping people get out of addiction. So just want to highly encourage listeners who are not familiar to definitely check out Kirk's website. And for the radio listeners, you can go to cornercaferadio.com and you can watch the video too. And on the video right now is kirkmsamuels.com, kirkmsamuels.com to check out more of what he does. But Kirk, there's so much to unpack with, the experience of church. You so eloquently say things, I can't say them as well as you just said. But with the lack of the masculine in church felt at some churches' experience. So if you're going to compare this church, who has a thriving, very healthy church with the balance of the feminine, the masculine, compared to maybe a church that doesn't, how would you assess that? And what would you tell a church that's saying, hey, we would love to reach out to more of the men and have the church experience be a place that they feel comfortable and where they feel they can actually give back to the body of Christ? What would you say and advise in that?
Well, first of all, when men are better, everyone's better. And that just is what it is. When men are better, women are safer, kids are safer, we're all safer. We're families are more together, even in terms of the physical attendance in church. And, this is nothing new to people who administer and lead churches. When you get a man, when you get a husband, you're going to get the wife and kids. Not necessarily when you get the mom. You may get the kids, but you don't necessarily get the husband walking in the door. And so when we have a healthy men's and just a masculine presence in the room and in the body, I mean, we're all going to be better. We're all going to be healthier. We're all going to be safer, and all those kinds of things. And at the same time, you get that perspective, you get that level of leadership. You get all those kinds of things. And so that being said, I think churches have to be intentional about reaching out to and having a not only just a men's ministry, but a masculine ministry. There's a complete difference. You can have, a bunch of guys that just kind of sit around, knee to knee, holding hands, crying on each other's shoulders, singing Kumbaya, and all that's great. And there's a place for all that. But you also need, men bond when we do stuff shoulder to shoulder. When we are going through experiences, men bond in different ways than women do. And quite often we don't necessarily bond in the circles, in the knee to knee kind of thing. We normally bond out in the woods or on some kind of experiential thing or something along those lines. And when it's a safe place for men, then men begin to open up and men begin to create, connections. One of the things in our Western culture is, quite often men find ourselves alone. Even a guy can have a wife and kids and still be alone. And when, the only thing God said wasn't good during that creation week was man being alone. Right. And so, when we're able to create safe spaces where men can feel and be and experience masculinity, then the doors get open for men to step in, get hands dirty, and to do some real work. And, it's pretty cool when you see a church where men are making things happen, where stuff's got to get built or stuff's got to get moved or, stuff's got to happen, all those kinds of things, and again, it's a safer place because men are more aware of a lot of different things. And so, but I think churches definitely have to be way more intentional about, making masculine ministry a priority, not even just men's ministry. You can have a men's group that sits around, playing cards and all that kind of stuff. That's totally different than men bonding and connecting and opening up and sharing the things that we struggle with and all those kinds of things. And like I said, some churches are phenomenal with that. And I would say there's a lot of churches that aren't. And I think there's reasons why, but there's a lot of churches that aren't.
Yeah, because, this is such an interesting topic because I've noticed within, certain activities that I've attended, the Bible says very nice. We want, everybody needs to be grounded in God's word. But, just missing like exactly what you said, the activities that men can feel like they're men, and I think about the early church and, first of all, they were being persecuted. So, but I don't think they got into such a complacency where I think maybe we have it too good now, and it can just we can have cushy seats, and we can sit around and share our feelings, and that kind of thing. For the ladies, we love it. That's the stuff we like to share our feelings. We like to be bonding in that way, but not so much for the guys. And so I myself don't even know how would you balance, good grounded Bible study, men type groups so people could be grounded in the word, but then also these activities where guys can really feel like men and feel like they're contributing. Do you think that men, they want to feel needed, correct? So if you maybe have a church environment where they actually feel like I'm actually contributing to the health of the church and contributing to the betterment of the community, that's some of the activities that can be built around that.
Yeah, I mean, I completely, again, men being, generally speaking, activity driven in terms of the way we connect. Jesus and those early disciples, they were activity, driven. They walked, they traveled together. They didn't just, sit around and do nothing. They were doing things. They had hands on people and then, Jesus even sent them out, like, hey, you two guys go to you two guys. I mean, and he sent them out to not only live the gospel and teach the gospel and preach the gospel, but to experience the gospel. And when they experience the gospel, then they come back with stories and they then it becomes real. And so, this might sound a little bit controversial to some, but it's what I've found talking to a lot of guys. Men's ministry, masculine ministry, I'm going to call it. Masculine ministry is probably just as much about life as it is about the Bible. Right. Meaning, I have to be able to, if I can't apply the word, if I can't apply my faith to my life, then my faith is only, an inch deep, but a mile wide. But when I can apply my faith to my life and live this thing out and learn some things about life and learn some things about trauma and learn some things that are not specific headers or chapters in the Bible, but I can apply those things, then all of a sudden my faith means a whole lot more. Then I can connect the dots, and so it's not let's just sit around and talk about the these and the dines. It's, let's sit around and talk about life. Like, man, I'm struggling with some stuff and how do I get through this, and how do I apply the word to my life and to the experiences of my life?
Right. Yeah. So many good things there. We're going to continue that conversation, but we're going to go to a quick break. We'll be right back.
What is the fine line between, quote, fair use and a copyright infringement? Stay tuned.
Legal advice you must not ignore. All ahead on today's Legal Alert.
Susan from Colorado was the leader of her church's prison ministry. That ministry conducted outreach to local jail inmates with the hopes of bringing them to the Lord Jesus. As part of that ministry, she wanted to use some photos, book excerpts, and other copyrighted materials to create educational material that she could use in her sessions with the inmates. She had heard that the copyright law contains a fair use exception for educators, but she didn't know the details. Thankfully, she called our attorneys so she could understand the current guidelines for educational fair use. Remember, it is very limited and requires specific guidelines. If you have questions, please call the Christian Law Association so that we can have you be legally protected, or talk with a lawyer locally who knows these issues.
That's attorney David Gibbs Jr. of the Christian Law Association. Visit our website for legal brochures, our e-alert newsletter, publication catalog, and more. Find us at christianlaw.org. That's christianlaw.org.
And now, Stand on the Word with Tony Perkins.
Our word for today comes from John chapter 14, as Jesus was having his final discussion with his disciples before he went to the cross. Quote, "If you love me, keep my commandments." Wow, that's a startling truth. Our love for the Lord is expressed in obeying his word. Now, in case the disciples didn't catch it the first time, Jesus repeated it twice more in the same passage. Quote, "He who has my commandments and keeps them, it is he who loves me. And he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him." Continuing, he says, "If anyone loves me, he will keep my word. He who does not love me does not keep my words." End quote. That means we can't claim to love God and deny his word. We can't love God and reject his teachings, living in contradiction to his truth. For more on our journey through the Bible, go to frc.org/Bible.
And welcome back to the Corner Cafe. And I'm just so thankful for my good friend, Kirk M. Samuels, who's joining me today. And his radio show is the Mad Men of Masculinity. And Kirk, just one more time, I want to give it a couple of times here. How can our listeners tune in?
For sure. I would say a good starting point would be madmenradio.com. Over the air here in the Denver area, 1220 a.m., with Saturday mornings at 8, Wednesday evenings at 6, and then on Facebook and YouTube, you can find us as well.
Yes, and so thankful for you, Kirk. And I don't know how many years, I think it was, 4 years, maybe 3 years, you were a personality for the show. And then you then started your own radio program, and just likewise, just want to say what a difference you've made in Corner Cafe, but also just as a friend. So thank you for being who you are. You're awesome, Kirk.
Wait 1 second. I cannot come on here without making fun of Jamie at some point. That's just the way we roll.
Yeah, he just happened to not be on the show today, so I'm solo here. It's funny because I feel I'm doing like the video, and I'm a one-man crew right here, but it's working. It works out. So yeah.
What a coincidence! I'm on, and somehow JB can't be on here. That knucklehead.
Yeah, you guys are funny together. I love your guys' banter, and talking about the masculine. A way that you show affection and love for each other is you like to make fun of each other. Right? Unlike ladies, ladies are like, oh, you're so amazing. I love your shoes. I love your hair. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, absolutely. When men like each other, we give each other a hard time. Two men like each other when they put each other down. When they make fun of each other, that's just the way we do. And Jamie and I, we've been for years. We go at it, back and forth. He's even a Dallas Cowboy fan, so that says it all itself. But yeah, that's how guys like each other. We just do things different, and when we have a free space to do that, it's a pretty cool place to be.
Yeah, and what a concept, Kirk, is that men and women are different. What a concept. I think it's in our society. It's it can be a contentious issue now, I guess, to even say that. But that's the point of your whole show, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're all about healthy masculinity, and we believe men are the tide, and when the tide comes in, all boats rise. And so we have topics that sometimes we speak for men, sometimes we speak to men, but in all cases, we don't go the red pill route and blame everything on women, and we don't do all that kind of stuff. We're all about empowering men to be everything that we can be, so that the world around us is a better place from a really practical perspective.
I love that. So continuing our conversation just with getting the masculine more involved in church. One of the things I was thinking before the break was, oftentimes it's a misnomer, I believe. People feel like they have to be perfect in church, or I got to be a perfect Christian. So in that environment, that can't be really healthy for the feminine or the masculine, really, because then you can't be yourself and open up and share if you're struggling. So do you find that as a factor, perhaps, in the men maybe feeling uncomfortable because they feel like, well, I can't be real there. I can't talk about real life. I can't do life with others because I have to pretend to be perfect.
Yeah, guys, I'm going to say 51 out of 100. Okay, so when I say most, I'm just lower the bar to that. 51 out of 100 men know in our hearts that we have a shadow side, that we have part of us that we have to wrestle with and battle and struggle, and we are intimately aware with that, and we know that it's a fine line between the light and the dark sides of who we can be. And I'm men in general, but then men individually as well. If you look at like a lot of the mass violence, the mass murders, the mass shootings, all that kind of stuff, most of them are lone males. And so we do struggle with a lot of things that we can't talk about in safe spaces, that we struggle with a lot of things that we can't just be open with. And unfortunately, I think over, some number of years, or, a generation or half generation or something like that, I think maybe for a lot of guys, church has not felt like a safe place to be broken, when it should be the safest place to be broken. Like, I tell people all the time, you don't say a hospital is terrible because of all the sick people. Like, that's why they're there, right? So,
right.
And so churches should be a safe place to be, but sometimes it can be the least emotionally safe to be for men, and men value safety big time. And so when it's a safe place to be, or when it's not a safe place to be, we'd rather not be there. We'd rather go to a place, some men, but men would rather go to a place for some men, that's the bar. For some men, that's the bowling league or softball league, or for some men, that's the office or whatever, but a place where I can just be me and I don't have to pretend. But I don't always want to walk into church, everybody, hey, brother, and everything is great, and, all this other kind of stuff. And sometimes, man, I've been getting my butt kicked all week, and I'm ready to tap out as a guy, and I need a place to be real and to be honest. And if I can find that, in this place, then great. And sometimes if I can find it in that place, then great. And so, yeah, from a guy perspective, we need those kind of places.
Right. Yeah. I think that, well, obviously just getting back to the Bible as well, but, Paul, obviously he was saying, I struggle, what I don't want to do, I do. And we're battling as believers. We battle, the flesh still, and then, we can go with the Spirit. The Spirit's reborn in Christ once we know the Lord. But there is going to constantly be this battle. And just being real as a person, we need those we can go to experience that. Now, I know being a lady and with my my girlfriends, we can share our heart, we can share our emotions, and then even like Bible studies, I really enjoy them because we can go around and share, what's going on in our lives. But am I understanding you correctly that perhaps that type of environment, though, isn't going to be a place that a man will open up? They'd rather maybe be doing an activity and then they can open up. How does that work with the male?
Yeah. So, just going a little bit back to my background, a lot of my foray into working with people and in ministry and working with men has to do with porn addiction. And, porn addiction is obviously rampant in the world and in the country, but also in church and in men in general. I could tell you that and I do a lot of one-on-one work with men in terms of getting free from porn like I did. But, when I hear these conversations, quite often these men don't feel comfortable in church, even being able to say like, hey, I'm struggling with this thing. I'm struggling with, with my sexuality, controlling my sexuality, or I'm struggling with porn or whatever, because they don't feel like it's a safe place to be. And so quite often that's the experience. It's like, man, I can't be if I go there and if I tell them this, the first thing they're going to do is try to fix me, try to heal me, try to get me to pray it away. And the first thing they're going to try to do is to go straight to the solution, when you have to connect with somebody first and be safe before you even get to the point of introducing them to the solution. And so, a lot of guys just kind of opt out. And the unfortunate part is, and I think this is very important, look, when guys opt out of church and you end up with a church primarily focused on women, from a pastoral perspective or church administration perspective, the reality is you almost have to begin to tailor to who's there. It's a fine line between creating a church experience that's safe and palatable and that's good for the people that are there because you want them to keep coming back, and then at the same time branching out to building the type of church you want to be. And so pastors in a tough spot. Do we, if women are here and they're serving faithfully and all that kind of stuff, do we meet their needs, or do we try to put some of those needs on the back burner and reach out to the needs of maybe some men who don't find it safe around here? And it's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, very good, Kirk. Well, I have so many more questions, but we're out of time. So real quick, give our listeners how they can get in touch with you.
First of all, you can call Rachel at 303. I'm just kidding. I mean, well, it's true. If you know Rachel, you can just text her and say, "Hey, how can I get a hold of Kirk?" And she'll forward you my number. But in any case, my personal website, kirkmsamuels.com, has all the stuff and ways to get a hold of me there. Pretty easy to find on social media. Pretty easy to find on the web. The radio show, madmenradio.com, is a pretty easy place to find us as well.
Great. Thanks, Kirk. Thank you for everything you do, and just thank you for being awesome. And we're going to have Kirk back in a future show. So,
love you, Rachel.
Love you, Kirk. And we'll see you at the cafe next week.